From Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is News 4 New York.
Coming up on the one-year anniversary for Pope Francis, and people of all religions have a lot to say about the latest man to follow in St. Peter's footsteps. We've convened a four-member interfaith panel to discuss this. Joining us now is Imam Shamsi Ali. He's the director of the Jamaica Muslim Center in Queens. Bishop Robert Rimbo of the Metropolitan New York Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis, and Msgr Joseph Quinn, Vice President for University Mission and Ministry at Fordham University. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard, our floor director, was joking that this is has all the makings of a bad joke, right?
Especially the bar stars.
But thank you for joining us. And I mean, you know, what we're talking about is how is Francis doing? What are your thoughts on that? We'll start with you, Imam.
All right. Let me first say that, you know, Pope Francis is a 21st century gift. A gift to all religious communities. His style, his essence as a human being, he's so sincere. I can see on his face, you know, oftentimes I look at his interviews and I say, this is the man of God, you know, who spoke out of his heart and his mind. And I think his humbleness and his inclusive nature in reaching out to all people, regardless of their backgrounds. And I think that is what religion is all about in the 21st century. You know, in time that many young folks out there losing trust in the religion, I think we need such inclusive communication in communicating our religious beliefs and practices.
A lot has been said about that, how he reaches out to indigent people and populations that we don't normally see popes reach out to. Is that something that he's doing right?
Absolutely. That's my sense is that, for want of a better term, his public relations skills are terrific, and part of that is his own apparent humility and willingness to be with people where they are at. It's just been amazing to see what he has done. I think he's, in fact, opening the doors for the whole church to enter into a new day.
Well, one of the things that has been said about him is that he's not afraid to walk away from the establishment line. So I'm going to ask a few of you what you think of that. But Msgr Quinn, I'd like to know. Well, do you think that his ideas are too far from mainstream Catholics?
No, not at all. I find most Catholics would say it is absolutely refreshing. If this new pope is anything, he is blunt, direct, candid, but always kind. And as the Imam has pointed out, always inclusive. If you told me a year ago that I'd be seated with a nationally renowned Jewish leader, a Lutheran bishop, and an imam, I'd say that's the first miracle. That we could all sit and talk about a pope who truly has somehow prompted all of us to think anew in refreshing and in new ways. And it's nothing short of startling to all, as the bishop has pointed out, to the entire church, all of us.
Rabbi, how do you view the pope?
Well, I tell you, given this pope's inclusive style, I expect to see a kosher kitchen at the Vatican within a few years, because he finds room for everyone. But I remember I studied Latin years ago, and the etymology of the word sincere is fascinating, because it comes from two Latin words, sine cera, without wax. When a sculptor would design something, if there was a flaw, put a little bit of wax called cera. Person coming in would say, I'll buy this on one condition. It's sine cera. There's nothing covering up the deficiency. This is someone without any cover-up, no facade. What he says is what he does, and how great is it? Because in our praise we say you should be on the outside the way you are on the inside. He is demonstrative of that great trait.
Okay. Now, New York Archbishop Cardinal Dolan was on Meet the Press this weekend and spoke about Pope Francis, conservative Catholics, and how Francis gets along with former Pope Benedict. Let's take a listen.
And if I saw the reports accurately, he didn't come right out and say he was for them. Once again, in an extraordinarily sincere, open, nuanced way, he said, I know that some people and some states have chosen this. We need to think about that and look into it and see the reasons that have driven them. It wasn't as if he came out and approved them, but he just, in the sensitivity that has won the heart of the world, he said, rather than quickly condemn them, let's see if, let's just ask the question. I haven't sensed a lot of massive discontent among the conservative Catholics. He, as you know, Pope Francis, has tried his best not to let there be a cleavage between him and Pope Benedict, because there might be the tendency in some to caricature each of them and almost set up a bit of a antithesis. And he keeps saying how much he loves Pope Benedict. He quotes from him.
What do you think about that dichotomy and the relationship between Pope Benedict and Pope Francis?
I think there is no dichotomy. From everything that I can see, there's one Pope.
That's true.
Yeah, and Pope Francis is the Pope. And I believe that Emeritus Pope Benedict realizes that, recognizes that, and has been very appropriate in how he has carried himself in this time. It's remarkable to see. I think what I rejoice in the most is the kind of openness that the Pope has displayed to all people. And I'm very hopeful that we will be able to explore that. And
he has given rise to that new hope through that extended invitation at all times.
I think sometimes when you're the former,
yes,
you're forgotten. We've seen that in a number of cases, not just in the religious world. Here's a pope that walks into a room, sees Pope Benedict, stops everything, goes over to hug him, to hold him, quotes him, makes him feel you still matter. And that carries over into other areas. But show me how you treat the former, and I think that indicates the kind of person you are.
It sets the tone for his whole well, reign, I shouldn't say. But on to same-sex marriage. We heard Cardinal Dolan speak about that a little bit. He says that it isn't just a religious issue, it's the bedrock of society, and that the tolerance of homosexuality in the U.S. is at the expense of religious liberty. Is this a turning point for the church?
You know, I don't want to involve, because probably this is, you know, a family issue in each religious community. But what I'm seeing in Pope Francis is about balancing between principles and the changes that happens in the world, between religious principles and respecting human rights, for example. So I think it is a way how to communicate issues around us. You know, as a Muslims, I know this, I have my own understanding of the issue, but how should I communicate this to the larger audience, to the larger audience in the world in the 21st century? And we know that this is a very sensitive issue. I don't think that he changed from his own view of the matter, but I think he knew how to communicate. How to communicate to the larger audience, especially to the young generation. As I said, that, you know, many young generations have lost the trust in the religion because of the way religious leaders communicate the faith in this 21st century. And the Muslims, I experienced that. Muslim youngs are going away from the mosque because imams are talking in a very conventional way. They're going to handle it. You know, especially this open society where we're living in the globalized world. You open the internet, everything else there. And now you're talking about 21st century back. It doesn't happen.
As a Lutheran, we would say, well, first of all, for us, marriage is not a sacrament. So that removes a certain level of understanding. But for us, pastors who are presiding at a wedding are really essentially acting as agents of the state. So for us in the state of New York, marriage is very open. And that's not to say that it's always that case in every one of our congregations.
Right.
And we're a very autonomous congregational polity. So
we only have a little bit of time left, but perhaps you guys can tell us, what do you think Pope Francis can improve on? What do you think are some areas?
Well, I think most of us would say, what's next?
Yeah.
Where do you go from the communicating of an invitation to look at things differently? And I think there's a certain sense of now what? One of the messages all throughout this year has been no judgment. Do not judge. Look closely. Listen carefully, but judge not. And I think the world needs to hear that. I think part of our judgmental sense is how we have divided the world. And I think his is much more of an invitation to come together.
I think this Pope is teaching us that Catholic is with a capital C and a small c. He's Catholic, he's devoted to his faith, but small c means universal. And my mother always taught me when I wanted to bring home a roommate from college, there's always room for one more. You don't have to ask, there's always room. This Pope is showing, find room for one more. And I think if he can energize grassroots, it'll be a tremendous accomplishment.
Bishop Rimbo?
I agree with both of my colleagues here, the two Joes. I think the Pope's great legacy to us, no matter how long he reigns as Pope, is that openness, that humility, that grace with which he welcomes all people.
And Imam?
And I agree with all of them, of course. You know, we are living in a world that is about,
everyone is in agreement.
It's about choice and responsibility. So I think he was insisting that we believe in what we believe in, but we give others to choose responsibly. That's what the world that we live in.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us and sharing your perspectives on Pope Francis's first year.
Thank you. Thank you.